at Mission Barns, we're making meat without having to raise and slaughter animals. The traditional technology for making meat has been around for thousands of years. And so what we're doing is using all these advances in medical and pharmaceutical technology that have been going on for decades and applying that to making meat.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our next episode of Join Us at the Table. My name's Albanie.
And I'm Tim, and this is going to be Will. So Will's going to be a process engineer at Mission Barns. And so Will, nice to meet you. I'm really glad to have you here. And I just wanted to ask if you could start by telling us a little bit about yourself, how you got involved in the cultivated meat production, and what led to you getting involved through what you did at SCU and your time there.
Well, it's really nice to meet both of you guys, and thanks for having me on the show. So I graduated from Santa Clara in 2018, and I studied bioengineering with an emphasis in biomolecular engineering. And it was really my experiences at Santa Clara that got me interested in joining this space. So it kind of started the summer in between my sophomore and junior years of college. I had the opportunity to travel to Cape Town, South Africa, and work with a team of burn surgeons there. And I actually got to go into the operating room and help them make skin grafts and assist on surgeries, which was really, really cool. And it got me thinking about how I could apply what I was learning in school to helping some of these patients. And I was lucky enough the following year at Santa Clara to take a couple classes with Dr. Prashant Suri in the bioengineering department that were focused on tissue engineering, which is growing tissue for humans or other animals outside of the animal's body. And Santa Clara is really unique in terms of the amount of stuff you get to do as a student in a class rather than having to do an entirely separate research project with a professor. So I got to learn a lot of really great skills during my junior year and even do some independent research within the context of these classes studying tissue engineering. And so that got me really excited about the idea. I loved working in the lab. I loved getting to design experiments, growing different types of animal cells. I thought it was really, really cool that we can create these tissues outside of a body. And so then through the end of my junior year and halfway through my senior year, I got to participate in the Global Social Benefit Fellowship, which is part of the Miller Center at Santa Clara. And through that, I did something completely unrelated to bioengineering. I did a consulting project for a healthcare company in Uganda. But through the process of that fellowship, it made me think about what I wanted to do with my career and how I can really have the biggest type of impact in my career. So when I came back to Santa Clara in my senior year, I was looking for different opportunities to apply my bioengineering degree to something that had a really big global impact. And I found out about this field of cellular agriculture, which doesn't just apply to growing meat, but it also includes making things like egg proteins or milk proteins. There are lots of other companies in our space that are doing things where we're engineering different types of cells to produce things that would normally be produced through traditional agriculture, where you have to use a super inefficient process where you're raising livestock, using lots of resources, and then a lot of times slaughtering the livestock to get what you want out of them. So I found out about this field, and I was lucky enough to get connected with some different people in the space, especially through CFIE. Actually, I got to talk to Erica French Arnold, the director of CFIE, which was back then it was called the Food and Agribusiness Institute. And I went to some events up in San Francisco where different people in the industry were talking, and I happened to meet the founders and first couple employees of Mission Barns at one of those events. And they said, "Oh, you're graduating soon? Well, we need an intern." And I interviewed with them and got the job. So it was kind of a roundabout way to getting into the industry. But I've been here for over 2 years now at Mission Barns and loved every minute of it.
Nice. What an awesome story. And I think that's so interesting that you entered cellular agriculture through the medical realm at first. That's a really cool story.
Yeah, it's a lot of these technologies were initially developed for medical uses. We've been growing cells in the biopharmaceutical industry for decades, and people kind of realize, oh, well, you can grow these cells or different types of cells and actually eat them.
Right, absolutely. Super fascinating, and I'm excited to see where it goes. So, Will, could you tell us about what the overall mission of Mission Barns is and why cellular agriculture companies are trying to disrupt traditional meat production?
Absolutely. So at Mission Barns, we're making meat uh, without having to raise and slaughter animals. And like I said earlier, the traditional technology for making meat has been around for thousands of years. And I kind of think of traditional livestock raising as a technology. It's just kind of a brutal and inefficient one. And so what we're doing is using all these advances in medical and pharmaceutical technology that have been going on for decades and applying that to making meat, which is always going to be a huge part of our food system. It's a big part of society and culture. And so what we're doing that's a little different from plant-based meat companies is we're making real meat, the same constituents that you'd have in a burger or a steak, which are just cells. And we're making it through a different type of technology.
Yeah, and I think that's super interesting the way that you guys are doing that. It's a super cool space to be in, I'm sure, for you. And so you guys talk about and do mission baking. And so we know the technology has allowed for cultivated meat to evolve rapidly. So can you explain to us a timeline of cultivated meat production over like the last few years?
Yeah. So kind of the beginnings of the idea of making cultivated meat um, were kind of started with Winston Churchill. He had this famous speech where he said, "Why would we have to raise an entire chicken if all we want is a wing or a breast? Why can't we just grow the part that we want to eat?" Um, and so it's something that people have been thinking about for a long time. But traditionally, cell culture, um, the growing of animal cells outside of a body, has been in really small scales. So back in 2013, a professor at Maastricht University in the Netherlands by the name of Mark Post was able to grow a lot of cow cells and make the first cultured burger. And that got people really, really excited back then. It was a pretty expensive burger. I think people had it on the order of hundreds of thousands of dollars to make it, but it kind of proved that this technology could work. So then a couple years later in 2015, there's a company called Memphis Meats that was founded in San Francisco at a biotech accelerator called IndieBio. And they were the first company to show that you can get a lot of funding for doing something like this. And then you fast forward a few years, there were a couple other companies that came out of IndieBio. Mark Post founded his own company called Mosa Meats. And there are a lot of other companies around the world doing similar things to what we're doing. And so Mission Barns was founded in 2018. And our focus initially is to grow fat instead of muscle cells, because that's where all the flavor is in meat. And so that's kind of what our focus is right now.
Interesting. Very, very cool. So we know that the cellular agriculture industry is growing, but on the other hand, we also know that as consumers are becoming more aware of the ethics and the environmental and the health impacts of eating meat, the plant-based meat industry is also growing rapidly. So in terms of this consumer insight and people learning more about what's going into their bodies, would you overall consider this an obstacle or an opportunity for Mission Barns?
I think that the growth of plant-based meats is a really big opportunity for us. In many ways, these plant-based meat companies have paved the way for cellular agriculture companies. For example, if you walk into a grocery store now, you'll see Beyond Meat, Impossible Meat, and other different plant-based meats right next to all of the other meats. in the same area of the grocery store, which is huge from a consumer standpoint. If you just see it right next to the other meats there, it kind of makes you think in your head, well, this stuff has to be pretty similar. So I think that's one way that they've kind of paved the way and shown that consumers are super willing to try these different types of alternative meats. They're also in, lots of different restaurant chains. So people are kind of starting to see, oh yeah, this is something I would try. People try it out. They like it. They're great products, all these plant-based meats. So I think that's a really good thing for us. The other opportunity there is for cellular agriculture companies to partner with these plant-based meat companies to create hybrid products. So, someone like Mission Barns could provide fat to someone like Impossible Meats, and, you get all of the flavor in your meat from the fat. So you get the good flavor that you're looking for, but you've already have this really good product that has the texture and the mouthfeel that you're already accustomed to in a burger. So I think there's a lot of cool opportunities for partnerships there as well.
Yeah, I've definitely, personally seen a big increase. I even started trying some, non produced from like barns or livestock meat. And, I found it to be very, very good. And I really like how you highlight how they could work together and make something like, pork fat to make it taste better. That's something that Forbes last month highlighted, that they announced the opportunity that you guys would let consumers try Mission Bacon or Mission pork fat from some SF restaurants. And so how did the feedback for that go?
Yeah, so we had a pretty small tasting, mostly because we couldn't get a lot of people into the restaurant at one time because of the current situation with COVID-19. But we had a tasting to showcase our Mission Bacon, which has been developed by our two really excellent chefs, Daniel and Michael. And we had awesome feedback. I think it was kind of beyond our wildest dreams. We've been working super hard on the product for the past couple of years, and it was really cool to showcase it. And we had lots of people coming up and saying, I could eat this stuff all day. And most people couldn't really tell the difference between what we made and what you would get from a pig. So that has been really exciting for us. And I think it's kind of helped garner a lot more interest for our types of products.
Great, congratulations. I'm glad it went well. I think that's such an important thing for people to have that moment where they think, I can't tell the difference. I think that's a really important goal for a lot of both cellular agriculture and plant-based meat companies. So moving forward, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but as we've seen, COVID-19 has disrupted so many parts of the food industry, including the meat industry. So what takeaways do you think cellular agriculture and cultivated meat companies can take from this change, and how has Mission Barns adapted?
Yeah, so I think that, there's been a lot of information coming out about how these different meat packing plants have been, they've had a lot of big outbreaks of COVID-19. People are working in super close quarters. And when you look at the history of a lot of different pandemics, a lot of them come from zoonotic diseases. The way that we've been raising animals for the past 100 years in close quarters and having them in close contact with humans is kind of the perfect environment for a virus outbreak. And especially recently with the introduction of a lot of antibiotics into livestock raising, that's like a huge red flag in terms of creating drug-resistant bacteria. And I think that if we continue on this pathway of, putting all these animals in really close contact and giving them some of these like last-ditch antibiotics, which really are only used in hospitals with people that have bacterial infections that aren't responding to our, kind of first line of defense antibiotics. Those are used in a lot of livestock raising, which is really bad because bacteria can evolve super quickly and become resistant to these drugs. So what we're doing at Mission Barns and what other cellular agriculture companies are doing and what plant-based meat companies are doing too is creating a more resilient food system where we don't have to worry about these risks as much, because we don't have to use all these antibiotics. We're not putting these animals in really close quarters. They're not coming in contact with humans. So viruses can't jump from the animals to the humans. So I think that's kind of looking forward into the future. That's what we would hope our food system would look like. And in terms of kind of adapting to COVID-19, it was challenging for us at first because we can't really work from home. We're in the lab every day working. So we had to kind of adjust our schedules a little bit so that people weren't working in close quarters in the same way that we were before. But fortunately for us, we're still a pretty small team. So that made it quite a bit easier for us than it would for a really large company like ours.
Yeah, I think it's really cool how you guys are, kind of on the front lines for figuring out the future and how to deal with pandemics using cellular agriculture and cultivated meat production and stuff like that. I never, thought that that would be something that could really help with pandemics or any type of outbreak, but it's really cool how you guys are doing that. And so for your, fellow Broncos who may be interested in sustainable and cultivated meat products and cellular agriculture, how do you think they could get involved with Mission Barns or even similar companies?
Yeah, I think that especially for current Broncos and Bronco alumni, if they're still in the Bay Area, this is totally a hub for this type of technology. There are at least a half a dozen cellular agriculture companies in the Bay Area right now. And that's really great because the community around cellular agriculture is really strong. There are different conferences that people can go to, which are really good opportunities to meet people. Like I said earlier, that's kind of how I got my job, was by going to a talk where I met some of the early Mission Barns employees. Unfortunately, right now, it's a little bit harder to do that. The kind of way that we network has changed a bit over the past 6 months. But a lot of these events are still going on virtually, and there are still lots of good opportunities to connect with other people. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of a big part of it is, just getting connected within the industry. There's a really good organization called the Good Food Institute, which puts on a conference every year called the Good Food Conference. There's another one called the Cultured Meat Symposium that I know the guy who started it, and we kind of worked together to do some of the planning stuff for the Cultured Meat Symposium 2 years ago. So yeah, there are lots of cool opportunities to network. And then in terms of, if you're a science-minded person and you're interested in getting involved with the science, I think tissue engineering is kind of the most logical step towards getting into cellular agriculture, because it involves learning how cells grow and how to make them grow en masse. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for those tips, Will. It's really inspiring to hear your story as a fellow Bronco and to see how far you've come with Mission Barns. Thank you so much for teaching us about Mission Barns and about cellular agriculture as a whole. I know me and Tim have learned a lot, and everyone is going to love to hear from you.
Well, thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you very much for being here.